Welcome to another Word of Torah with Moshe Abrams and me, Rod Bryant. We are so happy to have you guys join us. We are in the third chapter, verse 9. Right?
Yeah.
You're pretty
Must
good.
be doing the verse for
I'm not that
for your
coordinated
chapter.
to use two hands. See? Okay, let's get into it. We have a great class. Obviously, set it up. We're in the creation story still. Adam and Eve see this beautiful tree. Eve and Adam are standing there, and the snake entices them. We'll find out later on. She says that he tricked me. He fooled me. So we're going to find out what the true story is.
And she might have said that he married me, which is a real surprise.
I thought you were going to save that for later, but okay. We'll
sorry, yeah. Yeah, that's the really kind of fun thing about this is that, you know, sometimes when you kind of get a couple of different reads on the same word, you realize a word can be translated in a couple of different ways. That doesn't, we don't have to rule either of them out. We can hold two ideas at once with Torah. In the two tellings of the Eser HaDivrot, the Ten Commandments, in one telling, God says that you shall keep the Sabbath, which is the word shamor, to guard or to keep. And in another one, it says zakor, to remember. And I was talking with my first rabbi, and it's in two different places in the Torah. And I said, how can it be? I said, well, which one is it? He said, what do you mean, which? They're both here. I said, yes, but how could he? It's describing the same event. How can he say it two different ways? He said, well, what's the problem? And I said, well, I can't say two things at once. He went, exactly, you can't. Absolutely done. I was cooked.
A little insulting, but we can rule it out that it's all right not to be able to do that.
It's perfectly reasonable to give the creator of the universe the credit of the capacity to make a complex telling of something. Oh, I love it. So in this case, we used to it being translated, and God called to the man, and he said, where are you? But we discussed last week that that's not quite as straightforward as it might be.
Correct.
Because the modern word, certainly a long historical word for where, is aphor, but this says echa. And echa, it's got a couple of different ways it can be. If it's eich, aleph, yod, chaf, that means how. But if we can grab this word and we can use the wonderful resources of Sepharia, which is just a gem.
Yes. And
we'll pop it in here. And here's our word echa, and let's see what explanation we get. So it claims that the root here is where, which is what's getting translated as to where are you. It doesn't say are you, it just says where, whence, which, but also how. Eich, how, echa, how. And it can also be a falcon. We're pretty sure it's not a falcon or a hawk, right? I think it's reasonable to run that out just from context and say that's probably not that, because it doesn't make any sense, or a hart or a stag or a deer. But it's this idea that there's two possibilities, even just within that word as it is, that it can be where or also how, which. So what if it is where? Okay, so where are you? We know that God actually knows where he is. It's more like how a grandparent goes in the garden, sees some colourful shoes picking out at the bottom of the bush, and goes, where's Cindy? I'm gonna find you, and I'm gonna. That's the way. That's the instinct. We all do it.
And let's hope Hashem wasn't like Johnny on The Shining, going, "It's Johnny." You remember that? We don't want that.
That's a particularly terrifying.
Also, isn't it interesting that Hashem is asking them almost a philosophical question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are you now?
Yeah, like where are you in your story? Where are you in your... Absolutely. And also, if it's how, what's the how being asked? Because they've just gone through a big kind of confusing story where God said twice, once that you shall eat from all the trees of the garden, and the second that you shall eat not from this one, because when you do, you die. But it doesn't say if you do, you die. It says when you do, you die. And there's this back and forth, and the Nakash comes along and says, you won't die. And we see they eat from this fruit and they don't die immediately. Death is not it's not a poison thing. So there's all of this grey areas and complexity and seemingly complex information, and somehow they navigated through all this and came out the other end with their eyes opened, with a greater understanding of who they are, standing in front of God, and he says, how? And there's just that possibility saying, how did you figure it out? How did you navigate this? How did you come to this conclusion? Even if he disagrees, he could say, how could you come to this conclusion? But there's a how going on, not really a where, because where is simple. There you are. Done. You're in the tree. You're not good at hiding. Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted at the moment.
I'm sorry. Very, very good point. And I wanted to ask those who are listening to consider a moment that this isn't something that they have done that all of a sudden they're going to get an incredible amount of damnation and destruction from the Holy One. It
Yeah.
seems that he's going, okay, well, you figured it out. Now you know what you have to do, and now you know what the consequences are. It's all sort of part of a plan, but you decided to move it up quicker than you should have. You get the same thing?
That's the thing, is that this is not only a choice, but this is the introduction of the concept of choice. Like before this, there is no choice. You know,
we don't even know what free will is until this point, do we?
Right. God says, "Yehi or," there will be light, and then there is light. Like there's the light didn't get a choice about it, because whatever God says is true. So then, how does God introduce free will? Well, in the first case, he presented two options: you will not eat from all the trees. Sorry, you will eat from all the trees, and the second choice being that this one you won't. Right. But then those are in conflict, and then when they didn't jump on that immediately, he sends a Nachash, and I'm going to defend that, because this idea that the Nachash is in rebellion is absolutely nonsense, because there's no free will yet.
Which is not a theological concept of Judaism.
Right, the idea that nothing can be in rebellion against God. Where did the snake come from? God made it, so he didn't make it and slip up and accidentally switch it to evil instead of good. No, it's just it's performing the function it's supposed to perform. Right. It is carrying a message. Hey, you saw this problem of you'll eat from all the trees but not this one, and you haven't figured it out. Just look at it again. And she says, "Oh, we can't eat from this one. When we do, you'll die." The snake goes, "You won't die." And that's a half-truth. They will eventually die. But they don't die straight away. They're not poisoned. And all of that turns out to be true. And the most important thing is, then the snake says, "And you will become like God, knowing good from evil." So not like God in all ways. You won't become a God. You'll just become similar to God in that you'll know. And what did God say when God introduced the concept of man? Na'aseh Adam b'tzelmenu. We will make Adam in our image. And then the snake says, "You do this and you'll be like God." So being like in God's image is having the ability to know the difference of right and wrong. So they did that. When we talked about na'aseh means we will make, we were saying, well, who else can help Adam be in the image of God? Only Adam, who is in the image of God, can help Adam be in the image of God. God makes Adam, and Adam makes a choice to be in the image of God. That's this moment. So then God comes along and says, how? It's got to be, how did you figure this confusing mire of conflicting ideas?
It's actually beautiful. Let me explain. So many of our personal journey in our life is we discover the how in our relationship with Hashem by going through something that required us to make a decision that didn't have good results. And we just go, plus. And when we come to Hashem, we go, I figured it out, but it wasn't fun. But isn't that a part of our spiritual journey?
Yeah.
It is.
The really easy things. Like, I never felt the urge to do a murder, right? No. So it's very easy for me day in, day out to fulfill the commandment of not murdering. That's easy.
Look how good I was, Hashem. I never murdered a soul.
Never done one murder my whole time. But it's the grey areas. That's the real struggle. That's where you grow. Just like you said, that's where you grow. Right. Because you figure out the subtleties between these 2 points, and they look really similar, but I'm pretty sure this one is the... And I know I've got an instinct deep down, but I could have convinced myself to do the other thing. I could have come up with an argument for why to do that, but I didn't. So they take a risk, because it seems like they're not supposed to eat it. And they kind of figure out, we should. So God comes along, Vayikra. It doesn't say Vayoma and he said. It says Vayikra, and he called or summoned or named or hollered. This is big voice time. Adonai Elohim, both references to God, the noun and also the name. El Ha'adam, to the man. Now the Nachash was speaking to the woman, but we found out afterwards that the man was there the whole time. Vayomer lo, and said to him, Eicha, how? So what is going to be the Adam's response? V'yomer et kolcha shamati begam. Kol is voice. Kolcha is your voice. Kol chashemati, I heard your voice began in the garden, v'ira, and I was afraid. Yira is to fear. Ayira is I will fear. Va'ira is flipped into the past tense. I was afraid. Ki, because a Rome anochi, naked I was. Va, flipped into the past tense. Echabe, and I hid. So, but then that raises another question. He thinks that answers everything, but then God says, V'yomer, and he said, Mi higid lecha ki erum ata. Who told to you that naked you were? Right? Now, just as we're passing, soon we're going to talk about the binyanim, the buildings. One of the functions of how Hebrew works is to take a simple root and add in letters and change vowels to make all the different versions. And this is a hifil. So it comes from another word which has three black letters effectively, but then we've added in these two purple letters, and we've lost one of the letters, and it's transformed it into the verb to tell. And you're going to see this very soon because we're coming up to Pesach, to Passover, and we're going to use the Haggadah. The book is called the Haggadah, comes from this Higid word, and it means the telling of the story of leaving Mitzrayim. So who? Me means who. Higid lecha, who told to you ki arumata, that you were naked? And then he adds a question. And in a very rare circumstance, a hey can be an inquisitive presence. That is to say, this hey means that this is now a question. So he's saying, min, ha'etz, from the tree, asher tziviticha, that I commanded you. Let me just show you very quickly in a zoom in. So, mitzvah is a commandment. It comes from the verb tzava, which is to command. Tzava, if you put taf yod on the end of a verb, it means I did it in the past. So tzava means to command, tzavati means I commanded, and cha means you, masculine singular. So asher, that, tzaviticha, I commanded you, levilti, to not achal mimenu, to not eat from it. Akalta, you ate. So he's saying, who told you this? Is it that you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from, and you ate? So how's he going to react? This is the higid is the hifil, which is causative. Okay, so that we're going to talk about these different roots. This is the most simple, active, intensive, and causative. We have the same things in passive. Maybe we should do a whole session just on these, and with examples from the Torah. But from now, how is Adam going to react to being told, I know you ate this fruit? He says, V'yomer ha'adam, the Adam said, Ha'isha, the woman, right? Okay, now, pause here for a moment. If Adam thinks it's a bad thing he did, he's blaming the woman. If he thinks it's a good thing he did, he's giving her credit. And this is really important. He's face to face with God. Oh, sorry, I'm just muted.
So you're saying it's a possibility. It's not him blaming her, but it's possible that he's going, hey, look, she came up with the idea in a positive way. I've never heard that. Never heard that.
So we're in a situation where we've been surrounded by the idea that this is the cardinal sin. This is a Christian idea, the idea that this is the cardinal sin. It's the first time someone dropped a mistake, and from that all other sins come out. But that's not really apparent from the text. God certainly doesn't say, you have royally messed up. He doesn't say, this was a sin. What he does is, he says, okay, you've now made this choice. Now you're going to leave the garden. You're going to get a job. You're going to have babies. Now, any parent knows, okay, if you're old enough to do that, you're old enough to get a job, pay rent, start a family. It's not a punishment. It's the consequence of the stage that they've arrived at. Now, if people want to argue that this is a sin and a terrible thing, fine, then he's blaming her. But bearing in mind, if they had not have done this, they had not eaten from this fruit, they would not know they were naked, which means no babies. They also would not have become mortals, which means they're still there, they're still naked, they're still innocent, which means naive, no children, and all of human history has never happened. Now, I don't want to argue for that.
No, no, no,
Like,
no. No, I totally understand that. But I was just contemplating. We're having a discussion one day with a rabbi, and the subject came up that at some point prior to us coming and being formed into human form, that we made a decision, say, yes, we're in agreement with this. This is what we
yeah,
want to do.
yeah.
And we were debating whether there's an actual source for that agreement. And then you just said
Oh,
this, and I went, that's the
yeah,
agreement. God gave
yeah,
the choice.
yeah,
Clearly, as humans, we made the choice. This is what we
yeah,
want to do. We want to engage ourselves with the results of free will and the reward of
yeah,
free will.
yeah. Manis Friedman tells a story from the Talmud where that there's a conversation. It's a gada, which means it's a story, not to draw laws from anything, but just to give a perspective on the Torah. And it says that there's a moment where God goes away. He says, "Don't eat. You can eat from any of these trees, but not this one." Yada, yada. And because when you do, you'll die. And then he goes off, and the woman reaches for the tree, and the man goes, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Didn't you hear him?" She said, "When you do, you'll die." Clearly, he's expecting us to do this. And he said, "How could he be expecting us to do this? Surely he just told us not to." And she said, "No, no, 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 no. We're Adam and Eve. We're supposed to go down into the world and fix the world and do mitzvahs and elevate the world to make it holy that God can just walk into it. We're not in the world. We're in Gan Eden. It's already perfect. This isn't the job." So she does it knowing, it's our job to take the punishment of going into the world, to take the difficulty and the struggle of going into the world in order to elevate it. And that's all of our jobs. So
Wow.
maybe this is representative of all of our choice in Gan Eden. And we all have to go into the world and do something with it.
Right.
Don't just leave it as it is. Make it a little bit better. Make it a little bit holier. Take away the suffering of one person. Try and elevate the mitzvah of another person. And then God comes.
That is probably one of the most incredible lessons that we can learn in this Torah, in this piece of Torah right here. But it's also an important lesson for our spiritual journey, not to engage in such abusive, what do you call it, beating up of yourself. Like, oh, I'm terrible. I've done this. I'm a horrible person. I'm a bad person. And in reality, God's going, no, no, it's not.
Yeah, yeah.
You're looking at this wrong, totally wrong.
Yeah.
We call it in
God made
Judaism.
you
Right.
in his image.
Right. Right.
So you can't besmirch your image. You're besmirching the image of God.
Absolutely.
You don't have a right to do it.
And I find
You're not allowed.
The Christianity especially says sin is, the ultimate horrible thing. And in Judaism, it's missing the mark. That's a big difference between the two concepts.
Yeah,
This is where you want to go, but if you go below, then you have to figure out how to work it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, are we going to try to wrap this up? We only have a couple of minutes on this verse.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yeah, I think we need to take some more time over the next bit. We'll have to come back next week and dig in a little bit.
Absolutely. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. Let's just check that we've finished this here as it is. V'yomer ha'adam, the man said, ha'isha asher natata, the woman that you gave imadi with me. He natata li. She gave it to me. Min ha'etz, from the tree. V'ochel, and I ate. So if he is blaming, he's blaming God as well, because this woman that you gave me, it's everyone else's fault but his. And there's that issue that his son suffers from, is not taking responsibility for his own actions.
Unfortunately, that is sort of the way men do things. I don't want to say that it was Adam, but we're kind of that way. Come on.
Don't look at me, it's her. But if he's giving her credit, then he's incredibly humble, because he's saying, I didn't figure it out. She figured it out. And she's only here because you brought her. You gave me a wife. She's smart. She clocked it. She gave it to me. And then, last of all, I ate. And that's what did the thing. So I just want to say two more very brief things. We're going to see soon what we saw earlier, that when the woman was introduced, it told us about her putting a hedge around the mitzvah, which means the Torah is not describing her as some evil woman or some oblivious woman who's stumbling around, stepping on landmines. No, it describes her as someone who's holy, who's trying to protect the mitzvahs. And later, when Adam reacts, you'll see that the moment that Adam names this woman, after they're told they have to leave the Garden of Eden, is so beautiful that it really hammers home the point that he's not mad at her at all. He's very much impressed by this equal, this Asa Kenegdo of his. So I think that's a good stopping point.
It is, but honestly, I'm a little gobsmacked, because This is just a completely nuanced, beautiful way of looking at this text from most people's way of thinking, it says. They have been told something else. I mean, it's not necessarily wrong, but it has such a beautiful aspect of it that changes the way the story plays out, and also changes the story to where our lives work out. So incredible job. So next week we're going to pick up at this same place, correct? And then we're
Yeah,
gonna
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, guys, this has been, I'm sorry it's so short, but we want to keep your attention. We're like a sitcom. We're going to do it in 30 minutes, and we'll come back, and we save the world in 30 minutes, and we come right back. So anyway, shalom, you guys, and we'll see you next week at the same time. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom. Bye.